Alright, guys, I watched Triangle of Sadness. It's in theaters right now. It's been in theaters for quite a while, but I'm a little late to this one because I just came back to my hometown and I was waiting to watch it while I was in my hometown. Triangle of Sadness is a pretty interesting movie. I've never seen a movie from this director. He also made The Square, which has been on my watch list for quite a while. But yeah, this is my first time watching a movie from this director, and I must say, this was actually pretty good. This was a pretty good movie. So let's talk about it. First of all, I went into this movie dry. I didn't watch a trailer. I didn't look up the premise on IMDb. I didn't even know who played in it, quite frankly. And I think that's the way to go because if you watch the marketing material of this film before watching the film, I think you're going to be a little disappointed. I went in completely blind, and I think that was what was best. So the premise of this movie is that you have a movie in three parts. I'm just going to go into the first part. So the first part kind of follows this male model, and he falls for a female model who's an Instagram model. They go out to dinner together, and they have a debate over gender roles because the man is kind of annoyed that he always has to pay for her meal, and he starts to ponder why is it that the man must always pay for the woman, to which the woman replies that it gives the woman a sense of security, and if ever she were to fall pregnant, for example, she knows that the guy who got her pregnant wouldn't just abandon her. So you have this interesting dynamic going on between this couple. It's a very superficial relationship. They figure that they'll start dating each other in order to get more Instagram followers, yada yada yada. All of a sudden, things become weird when they decide to go on this very expensive cruise. Like I said, there's much more to the movie. I would recommend you don't look up anything. I think I set it up perfectly. Don't look up any more things pertaining to this movie. Before I go into mild spoilers, I just want to say that what works about this movie is that it's a commentary on relationships, both personal relationships, romantic relationships, but also political relationships. It has a lot to say about how power is structured in our society and how power works in a relationship. You have this couple that has a very transactional relationship. I give you this if you give me that. Even romantic relationships work like that in this day and age. And the film plays around with that and says, look at all these relationships we have in our society. Which ones are true affection and which ones consist of just a transactional relationship. This is a comedy, and this is probably the most awkward, fucking weird comedy I've seen in quite a while. I walked out of the theater thinking of The Lobster with Colin Farrell. It really has that kind of dark, cynical sense of humor that The Lobster had, or other movies from that director, The Favorite and Killing of a Sacred Deer. If you find The Office awkward, wait till you see this. This is like the most dry, awkward comedy I've seen in a while. That said, I was alone in the theater watching this with one other person who was also alone, probably another film buff who couldn't get a friend to tag along. But we were dying in the theater watching this movie. There are really some laugh out loud moments, and I was actually pretty impressed when it came to that. I'm gonna go into some spoiler territory. Like I said, I recommend you don't look at this movie on IMDb. Go in blind like I did, and I think you'll have a very good time watching it. But that said, it's kind of hard to talk about this movie without at least minor spoilers. So go watch the movie, come back to this video later. But the movie kind of plays around with the idea of what if our society would restart from zero? These people go on a boat, the boat crashes, they end up on a deserted island, a little like Gilligan's Island. But what if society just restarted and went to zero? And how would our society end up constructing itself? All of a sudden on this island, the richest person, who was this big Russian capitalist who would manufacture manure to people, all of a sudden he's useless, and the most useful person on this island is one of the housekeepers from the cruise. She's the only one who can fish, and she's the only one who can make a fire. And all of a sudden, the power dynamics of this island completely flip around. All of a sudden, the top dog on the ship, who was this capitalist guy, is now the most useless person on this island, and what was quote-unquote the most useless person on the cruise is now the most important person. And obviously the power gets to her head, And all of a sudden, the women start becoming the more dominant sex on this island, and the men are all kind of more useless. This movie kind of has like a good sense of irony. When you're on the ship, Woody Harrelson, who's in this movie, but he's not in the movie all that much, but when you watch this movie, Woody Harrelson has a debate with the Russian character over socialism versus capitalism, and Woody Harrelson says that it's unfair to make someone wealthy just because they have more skills. To which the Russian disagrees and says that you earn what you provide. Once the Russian is on this island, all of a sudden he's the most useless person, and therefore he's the one who's eating the less. There's also some irony when it comes to the relationship between the models. So at the beginning of the movie, the guy thinks it's unfair that men are the providers of the relationship, and the girl justifies it, saying that women are just seeking security. Once they're on the island, all of a sudden the guy kind of becomes the sex object of the maid, and he's basically having a transactional relationship with the maid, giving her sex, and in return she gives him pretzels, and the girl starts to become jealous of that. So all of a sudden, everything that these characters stood for and thought becomes challenged once they're on this deserted island. And when I say that the movie is awkwardly funny, I'm talking about one scene in specific. Woody Harrelson is an alcoholic in the film, so he leaves the boat unattended, and all of a sudden there's this giant storm, and people start getting seasick, and people are vomiting constantly. And it's just funny to see this ship full of rich socialites, these aristocratic people, puking consistently, and the movie just shows you repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly people vomiting, people slipping. There's this really funny shot of a woman puking in a toilet, and all of a sudden the ship tilts and she slips away from the toilet, then she slips back towards the toilet and pukes again. Just moments like that were so awkwardly funny, and it kind of gave me a sense of unease too, because in about a year from now I'm gonna go on a cruise myself, and I'm really scared of some of the shit that happened in this movie. Stuff like the toilets over flooding, and then like the water becomes diarrhea filled, and then like people get the diarrhea water all over them. Just shit like that. I hate poop in movies. It's the one thing that gets under my skin. That's like my phobia, is poop. Being close to poop. So yeah, it just has like this really cynical, dour sense of humor to it. The movie is not perfect, but it was entertaining throughout. I think the movie kind of just didn't know how to end, and it does one of those things that I hate in movies, where the solution was right under their nose the whole time. Stuff like that kind of bothers me with movies. The ending kind of feels like a giant shrug. It was just like, I don't know how to end this, and then it just ends. It tried to have a deep ending, but I don't think it quite worked. That said, this is definitely one of the funniest movies I've seen in quite a while, just on how fucking awkward it is. And I really like how it played around with its theme. We've seen this type of movie done before. These people crash on an island, and we just got the movie Old not that long ago by M. Night Shyamalan. That kind of has that similar premise. These people are stranded on an island. Granted, it had a more supernatural feel to it, but this movie kind of plays with that idea and pushes it to its fullest potential. And for that, I think this is quite a clever movie, and you should go watch it in theaters. Guys, have you seen this movie? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Comment below, let me know, and I'll see you guys around.